Yo, today we're gonna look at the fried liver attack. So obviously we're in the Italian opening, and now black plays the second most popular move, which is knight to f6. The most popular is bishop to c5, but now the queen is controlling g5, so you cannot really go for the knight attack. Because for example, if you castle knight to f6 and now you go knight g5, they can just castle and defend the pawn. So that's why after knight f6 immediately, knight g5 is effective, because you're attacking the pawn and black cannot castle to defend. Now here the best move is d5, so intercepting the bishop. You just take, and now the main line goes knight a5, which we're gonna cover in the next video. But the fried liver is after knight takes d5, which is actually a mistake. So black just recaptures back the pawn, which is looks like the most natural move, but it's a slight mistake because of knight takes f7 or d5 or d4. This is also a move. This is called the lolly attack, and the point is you're defending the knight and just you want to open up the center. So the line in the lolly attack might go something like knight takes, which is the most popular move. You have to play c3, and now they have to find b5 or f6. b5, still most players do find it, or they know it. Bishop d3, now they go h6, you take, king takes, you take the knight, and then let's say ed castles. Something like this, or check and then block and then take and then castles, the same thing. And in this position you're down a pawn, but the black king is in the center, so the computer evaluation is obviously better for white. But today we're gonna focus on the fried liver, which I think is a way more exciting variation. So when the knight recaptures the pawn, you go knight takes f7. Now, what is the point of this move? Well, you're just forking the queen and the rook, so black has to take. And now you go queen to f3 check, so forking the king and the knight. The only move that keeps the equality is king to e6. Actually, it doesn't keep the equality, but kind of fights on. So king to e6, obviously the point is they're defending the knight. Now let's look at what else they might play. The easiest is king to g8, which just loses. It looks like they're hiding the king, so tucking the king in, but the king is not safe at all, because actually I like to take with the queen here, just so I deliver the checkmate with the bishop. So you take the knight. You can see that black has no other move other than capturing the queen. I guess they can they can even get checkmated one move earlier, but obviously queen takes, bishop takes, and now bishop has to block, and you take the bishop, and this is checkmate. So king g8 just loses immediately. Now there is also, I guess, king to e8, which just doesn't do anything about the knight, so you just take the knight. You're threatening checkmate. Many players go knight to d4 and just hang the checkmate. But the most popular move is queen to f6. Now obviously I'm looking at the 2000 or above rating database, like the moves, and most players go queen to f6. You take the knight, black takes with the pawn, and now doesn't matter, you can go for this queen h5. You can also just, I don't know, tuck the queen in, or you can even trade it, because like you're up a pawn, so why not, and the structure is damaged. But the best computer move is queen to h5. The point is you want to induce a weakness, and now you drop back to e2 and you castle and develop. And obviously you're just way better. So this is what happens after king e8. Now there is also queen to f6, which is the most popular, except obviously king e6, which is the best move. So queen to f6 immediately, you take the knight, because black didn't defend it. They're gonna play bishop e6, and now you take the other knight, because if they trade queens, you recapture with the bishop, and you're gonna be up a piece. So that's why pawn takes, you take the pawn, and now they go bishop to d6, so defending the c7 pawn. Now this position is obviously completely winning, but I've actually lost a bunch of times because I rushed with, obviously the best move is knight to c3, but you shouldn't rush with knight to e4 and then taking the bishop. You shouldn't do that, because then I got into a lot of trouble, because black got a crazy attack. So you should keep the knight on the board. So what you should play is knight to c3. Black is gonna go rook h to f8. So they want to tug the king in and attack your f2 pawn. You castle, so you defend preemptively, and now king g8. And now we go knight to e4, attacking the queen, attacking the bishop, but you do not take, remember. Queen e7, and now you go b3. And this move is really good because there is gonna be no pressure on the b file as well later. Now black is gonna go bishop to d7. You go check, bishop e6, and now you go back to e2, and you're just gonna have a clean way to convert, because you're just gonna develop the bishop, put the other rook in the center, and you can play f4 or d4 to open up the position. So obviously it's also fine if you take, like it's not losing, it's still better, but if you play b3 it's gonna be much cleaner. So yeah, this is queen to f6. Now let's go back and look at the best move, which is king to e6. Now this obviously defends the knight because it's attacked 2 times, and now it's defended 2 times. Now you play knight to c3, putting pressure on the knight again, because the knight cannot take because it's pinned. And now black has 2 moves, knight b4, which is the best, or knight e7. Anything else is just losing. Actually, some players here play knight to d4, which looks good because it attacks the queen and attacks the pawn, but obviously just bishop takes with check. And then actually black can get mated here pretty quickly if they go back. Queen f7 check, king d6, and now knight e4 checkmate. So that's why only 2 moves. Now let's start with knight e7. So this is still a good move, not the best though. Knight b4 is the best. Against knight e7 you play d4, so you immediately strike at the center. Black has to play c6, because if they don't, let's say they just take the pawn, here there is a funny line. You're gonna play bishop to f4, just sacrificing the knight completely. Black takes. Now you castle long, black takes, you check, and now do not take back, but you just hide the king on b1. And this is called an umbrella pawn, so a enemy pawn that's shielding your king, because black cannot make use of this pawn. And it's actually better that it's the black pawn, because if it was the white pawn, at least black can attack it, but if it's a black pawn, black cannot do anything. For example, if let's say the b file this pawn was missing and the rook was on b8, like black doesn't have any pressure because the pawn is in the way. So your king is completely safe. And yeah, this is just losing. Let's say c6, you bring in the other rook, and yeah, the game can be over in 2 moves. For example, all of the games went king to d7 here, and now you sacrifice the rook, pawn takes, and now you play bishop b5 check. So you check, knight to c6, and now queen to h3 checkmate. Or if knight takes, then queen h3 immediately, just mate. So that's why black cannot take the pawn. Black has to play c6 to support the knight further. And now you just play d, so you take the pawn in the center. Black here, the best move is king to d7. There is also b5. b5 has also been played, or knight to g6. I guess let's look at knight to g6. Just briefly, you castle and then bishop to c5. So they want to get the rook into the game. You're gonna play rook to d1, so putting pressure on the knight. And again, there is a funny line. Rook f8, attacking your queen, and also the pressure on f2. You do not care, you just play knight takes d5. And the reason is there is gonna be a discovered attack, and you're gonna win the black queen. So let's say rook takes, you play knight c7 check, actually double check, king e7, and now bishop to g5 even, so developing another piece. And you're also, because if you take here, then black can recapture, but when you play bishop g5, you're gonna win the queen cleanly, so without losing any pieces. And yeah, this is obviously just lost. If here you take with check and then you take the rook, if rook blocks, you take the rook with the pawn and then you recapture the queen. Or you take here the pawn first, king takes, and then you take the queen. Obviously completely winning for white. Now what else is there? So knight to g6, b5 also. You just drop the bishop back, a5, they want to trap your bishop, you do not care, you play bishop g5, so pinning the knight to the queen, because now you have ideas of taking and also long castles to put the rook on the d file. a4, you take the knight, c takes, because if queen takes, you take the queen, if knight takes, you take the queen. So c takes, now long castles, and you just have way too much pressure. Now let's go back. So this was b4 and knight g6, and now the main move, or the best move, king d7. So they want to run away. You play bishop g5 again, so again this idea of pinning and long castles. They play king c7, so getting off the d file. Now you play bishop takes d5, c takes, and now you play knight b5 check. And the idea is gonna be, obviously the king is gonna go in, because if it goes out, you can just castle, because if king takes, you just have rook check. And actually you take the knight first and then rook check. And obviously the king is gonna get mated. So the most popular move by far is king b8. And now the same idea as if in the start, if the king instead of going to e6 goes to g8, where it has no moves, again the king is basically in the same position, so that's why you play e6, and the idea is gonna be this devastating bishop check. And now black actually just has to give away the queen. For example, queen a5 check is the most popular move. You block and then they have to take, because if they take the knight, you just checkmate them. So yeah, this is what happens if they play knight to e7. Now let's look at the best move, the main line, knight to b4. So the idea of knight to b4 is the same. They're defending the knight, but they're also putting, I guess they're attacking the c2 pawn. And now, when I first studied this position, when I was about 1200 or something like that, I started playing bishop b3 to defend the pawn, which is a fine move. But the best thing to do here is just to castle and just give away this pawn, give up this pawn, because they cannot really take it. If they take, they relieve the defense of the knight on d5, so you just take with check and then just get in. So they cannot take. So that's why they have to play c6, which most of players do. So they're just supporting the knight. And now again, d4, just open up the center. Now here, there are several moves. We're gonna look at knight to c2. This is the most popular. Queen to f6 is the best move. We're also gonna look at king d6 and king d7 because they score really well for black. So we're gonna look at what to do if they move the king. Now let's start with the most popular, knight takes c2. They're attacking your rook and you just don't care. You take on e5, they take your rook. Now you play rook d1, so you're putting pressure on the knight. Most popular move, bishop c5, you take, and this is just completely lost. So for example, c takes, actually the best move is rook takes, because now there is a unstoppable discover check, and the best move is bishop takes, after which you do not even take the bishop, you just move the king, and now it's mate in 5. And you know the position is bad when the top engine move is queen f6. So yeah, just totally lost. Now let's go back. So knight to c2. Now let's look at what if they move the king. If they go to d6. So this is not a popular move, but black scores really well if they play king to d6. So let's look at what you should play in this situation. You should play bishop g5. Now this looks crazy, you're just hanging the bishop, but it's a simple idea. If they take the bishop, you have a fork. So bishop to g5, they're gonna play bishop e7, and now you play bishop takes e7, they take with the queen, and now you just play rook a to e1, so just attacking the pawn. Now something like rook f8, attacking your queen, you just slide to g3, you just have the pressure on the e5 pawn, and yeah, something like, actually there is only one game here, rook f5, and then you play rook takes, rook e1, because the rook is pinned and you're just gonna crash through and the king is still in the center. Now let's go back. Obviously you do not have to remember the lines so deeply, but you should, for example, you can know bishop g5 if you really want to know everything. Obviously if you're a beginner, you should just remember a couple of moves. So for example, if they play knight to b4, you should just remember castling and then d4, because it's gonna be enough. So yeah, king d6. Now another unpopular move, but the move that scores well, is king to d7. You play a3, so attacking the knight, and now they can play knight takes c3. This is the most popular move, so they just want to damage your pawn structure, but you play ab, so you take this one, knight to d5, and now you just play bishop takes, pawn takes, and now you can play rook a5. Obviously taking is completely fine, but rook a5, a engine idea to take with the rook. So you can see that there is no problem if black plays king d6 or d7, but you have to know what to do. So yeah. But now let's look at the best move. Queen to f7. I mean queen to f6. Do not trade queens, because remember you sacrifice the knight on f7, so do not trade queens. You play queen e2, pinning the pawn and avoiding the queen trade. Now the best move is king e7, most popular move is king d7. There is also bishop d6, so this move. Yeah, I guess let's start with the most popular, which is king d7. Here you're gonna play d, because obviously now the pawn is no longer defended. So you play d, attacking the queen, and now two moves which are basically the same, queen f5 or queen g6, doesn't matter, because the position is gonna be the same. So let's say queen g6, you're gonna play a3, they're gonna take this knight, because they're attacking your queen, so they want to damage your pawn structure. Notice that they cannot take because of this move. So they play knight to d5, and now you just play bishop d3 attacking the queen. Queen is gonna go back to f7, so if the queen was on f5, the queen would go back to f7 as well. So that's why I'm saying the doesn't matter if queen is on g6 or f5. So queen f7, and now you just go f4. And the idea is f5, e6 fork. Also, just get the bishop out as soon as possible, but first, obviously, kick the knight with c4. So let's say, I don't know, king moves, you kick the knight, knight goes back, you can advance the pawns and play bishop f4, and just basically just get the pieces in as quickly as possible, because the king is in the center. So yeah, this is the line. Actually, let me just show you what if bishop check, because this is this is the only move that has been played. Obviously king h1, and now they try to tug the king, and now f5, rook e8, and now c4, kicking out the knight, knight b6, and now e6, and you can see that you're just advancing. Bishop f4 check, notice the rook is hanging, bishop f4 check, and yeah, bishop d6, bishop takes, king is again in the center, and you can probably sense that this is gonna be lost in a couple of moves for black. So yeah, this is the most popular move. Now let's look at, so this was queen to f6, queen e2, most popular move, king d7. Now let's look at another popular move, which is bishop d6. So they just want to develop all of the pieces. You play a3, so kicking the knight again. Knight is gonna go back to a6. And now, because there is no knight c3 here, because the knight is pinned. So knight a6, and now you're gonna play f4. So you just want to take and fork the queen and the bishop. And now the most popular move, e4, which just knight takes, and you're just totally winning again. Now I'm not gonna show you all of the lines so deeply, because there is no point. If you get this position and then lose, then that's your problem. So now queen f6, queen e2, and now the best move, which is king e7. Now not a lot of players know that, about 12%, but black wins 60% of times if they play king e7, because white just doesn't know what to do. But obviously I'm gonna show you. You play knight to e4, so you attack the queen. Queen is gonna go to g6, to get out of the attack. Now play a3. So a3 is always an idea. a3 just to kick the knight away. They can move the knight. There is also this move, so counter-attacking your knight. You play f3, so you support the knight. Knight a6, now de, so you take the pawn. King d8, so this is now just total computer moves. You're never gonna reach this position. Let's say up to, there was a game knight a6, up to here, and now this is just computer moves. But you can remember the ideas. Let's say king d8, and now bishop takes, pawn takes, and queen takes. And in this position, black has a bishop for 3 pawns, but the king is in the center. So yeah, that's why white is still winning. And the line goes on. Yeah, this is now this is all. This was queen to f6, which was the main line. But now let's do a quick recap, just to go over the most important lines again. So this position, knight f6, you go knight g5, which is the knight attack, attacking the pawn. It's called this variation is called the knight attack. d5 takes. They make the mistake of taking the pawn. You take on f7, king has to take, you go check. Now, I guess we can just this is for myself actually, because I've lost this position many times. Take here, take. This is all normal. Knight c3, here castles, king goes back, and now knight d4, this move, and now b3. So b3 is the one move that you should remember if you want to have the cleanest conversion. And then obviously bishop here, you get the queen back to e2. So check and queen back to e2. You're gonna play bishop b2, bring the rook, and so on. And then d4. Let's go back. I'm not gonna show you other king moves because obviously all of them are losing. King e6 only move. You go knight c3. If knight d7, if knight e7, you go d4 immediately. They have to play c6, defending. Now you go d, so you take the pawn. The most popular move, king d7. They go back. You go bishop g5, so you pin. King c7, now you take on d5, knight cannot take because it's pinned, so that's why pawn takes. You play knight b5, king goes to b8, you go e6, this is the idea, and you saw the continuation before. Now let's go back. What if knight b4, you castle, you do not care about this pawn. c6, they have to defend. Actually, they reinforce, let's say. Now we play d4. So in knight b4 line, you first castle and then you play d4. So d4, now let's look at I guess the best line only. If queen goes to f6, you go queen e2. Now, most popular move, king d7. You go d, you attack the queen, queen g6 or queen f5, doesn't matter. a3, knight is gonna take because they want to damage the pawn structure. If knight takes, remember this move. So that's why knight d5. Rook d1, king to... No, not rook d1, bishop d3. Yeah, I was looking at the most popular, not rook d1, bishop d3. Queen goes back. Obviously, rook d1 is also fine. Like it's not the like bishop d3 is the only move, but it is the best computer move. Queen f6, queen f7, and now f4. So this is this line, and you saw the ideas: c4, and then f6, e5, bishop out, rook to the center. Let's go back. Yeah, I guess this is okay. Let's look at this move again, because this is the most popular. Knight takes, they attack your rook. You play d, you capture the pawn, they take your rook, and now we play rook to d1, so putting pressure on the knight. Knight, some players play knight to c2 as well. They are just greedy, they want to even keep the knight, but the most popular is bishop to c5, and now we just take, and yeah, just crash through. And if you want to be extra precise, you take with the rook. So yeah, that's it. That was the fried liver attack. So knight takes f7, and yeah, that's all from me. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next time.